Okay. Right. If anyone else is coming, okay. Okay. Right. So we did the last bit last week pretty quickly. So let's just maybe recap that briefly. So let's just go over the last case. 1 second. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So the last case basically was someone said to someone else, "What are you doing in this house?" So he said to him, "This is where the two dots are." Yeah, he said, "I bought it from I bought it from you. I've been there for 3 years. I've used the land properly for 3 years, and I bought it from you." So he's got both elements that are needed. He's got the chazaka, and he says he's got the taina, the claim. And the next sugyas, we're going to see that a lot of things can go wrong with the claim element. You know, very often you can have a case where someone has got the chazaka, and he's got Eidim that is chazaka, but he's got a dodgy claim. He's not able to say, "I bought it from you." He's got some funny claim, we'll see, right? Here, he's got both elements. He's got the chazaka and he's got the claims all fine. But the other guy says, "I was outside. I wasn't anywhere near. I wasn't there. I wasn't around. And therefore, because I wasn't around, okay, therefore I didn't know, and that's why I didn't object, right? So the point here is that because he effectively was in a place that the Rashbam says you have to say that scenario is where he's in a place where you do not expect him to hear this news, such as places which are not at peace with each other, okay, or there's no peace in the country. But if there are people traveling and it's not in a time of emergency, it's all fine, okay, then he can't make that taina. He can't make that claim because we say, and you know, this is the that we paskin that machzikin b'nichsei bareach. You make a chazaka in some of the property, someone who's run away, because machal shlebefonov is a machal. You're allowed to you make an objection when he's not there. You can do that. So the fact that you've run away is not my problem. I can still have a valid chazaka in your land. You can make a machal wherever you are. You can object wherever you are. And if he says I didn't make a claim because I didn't know that this person was in my land, that's not a taina. He's not believed. Okay. Because the two things go together. If there are people traveling, okay, then you're going to hear about it, and if you're going to hear about it, you also should have objected, right? It goes both ways, right? So therefore, the whole case here must be where news does not travel. Shuki Bara would not hear. So that you've ruled out his ability to object when he is abroad, when he's away. The only problem is, says the Gemora, I've got Eidim that every 30 days you used to come back. You used to come back. You were here for 30 days. Every 30 days you used to be here. He says, I was busy all those 30 days. I did not have an opportunity to object. The Rashbam rejects the pshat that I didn't have time to object. Probably because it's not a logical, valid claim. You know what I mean? You don't have time. How big a deal is it to object, right? How big a deal is it to object? And therefore, the only way to understand this is that I didn't know that you were living in my house because I was somewhere where there wasn't, because I was busy and I didn't hear about it. Just didn't hear about it, okay? And obviously it has to do, he's got another house. Because if he doesn't have another house, he's obviously going to come home and visit the house, right? Get to his house, right? So therefore, that is a valid, and the chiddush here is that Robert says, Ovid inish to kol tlos and yomi torid b'shukah. It's a reasonable thing to say. It's a reasonable thing to say that that for 30 days a person is too busy and therefore they don't hear the news. And because it's a reasonable claim to make, I'll get to you in a second. Because it's a reasonable claim to make, what does that mean? Yeah, there's no chazaka. Because whenever the ma'ara has a reasonable claim, a reasonable grounds for why he did not object, yeah, your proof that you own it goes out the window, because your proof rests on the concept of midoloi micha, because he didn't object. But if that falls away because he's got a valid reason why he didn't object, i.e., I only came for 30 days a year, and those 30 days I was so busy I didn't hear what was going on. I had another house, multiple properties, I didn't know what was going on, right? And that is a valid claim. Shmuel, you had a question?
When you said that it's not a big deal to complain,
Right.
But before you know, this could be a property tycoon who's got plenty of properties.
Yeah.
This is a small thing he does.
Yeah.
And so he doesn't want to lose it, but he also doesn't care about it.
Yeah, it's a bit. I think that that even for someone who owns a lot of properties, and the simple explanation of why the Rashbam doesn't like that approach, in other words, I heard about it, but I didn't have time to say anything, is because even someone who has a lot of properties is not going to be so careless as not to, what? Yeah, remember, he doesn't have to even go there to make an objection. All he has to do on the other side of town is stand in front of 280 and say, I object, pretty much. I mean, that's the basics of it. It's not a big deal to do that. So it's more logical to say he didn't hear about it. Yeah. Okay.
The other thing about it is he was lying.
Who's lying?
I was away. The other guy says, actually, no, you weren't. You were here for 30. Oh, yeah, I was here for 30 days, but I didn't actually. I was too busy in my marketplace. I was too busy. His first claim is that he wasn't there.
It's a very interesting point there. It's a very interesting point because you have to say that he's not, it doesn't contradict what he said before, it complements it. It does put him in a bit of a bad place. You're right. It does mean that Beis Din are probably going to be frowning over their long beards at him.
Take his evidence with pictures.
Yeah, but nevertheless, it's not like he's making a claim and then reversing the claim or contradicting the claim. It's very, very easy. We'll see in the next case. It's very easy to put yourself in a position where literally you snooker yourself, like because you say something, you're finished. We're going to see that now, right? He hasn't quite done that here. He's on the edge, but he's not quite fallen off the edge. Again, you have to understand, right? The logic here, very simple logic, right? We have to make a decision. Who is the owner, right? The Morikama, the original owner, has evidence that he's the owner. The guy who's living there now doesn't. That's the point. He's got squatter's rights. He's got 3 years. That's all he's got. He's got squatter's rights and he got a claim. Unless that's rock solid, the default is going to push it back to the Morikama. You have to bear that in mind. I'm not saying the default is the Morikama, is the original owner. I'm not saying that that's always the default. I'm saying that without a solid claim, in other words, if the original owner has a reasonable explanation, there is no proof that you own it. The guy who's living in it now, there's no proof. You're stuck. Yeah, but chazaka alone is only a raya. That's all it is. Chazaka is just a proof that you own it. That's the point. If chazaka was something else, if chazaka was a whatever, I don't know, a physical act of acquisition or something, that's a different story. It's not. It's just a proof. I come along with a proof. I'll prove to you I own it because I've been there 3 years and I've got a reasonable claim. All right, but that doesn't work if we can defeat it.
How do you reconcile that position with what we learned 2 weeks ago, where the guys make the whole public announcement in the public football place? We are currently in 22 Single Drive,
right?
And we're here and we're there and we're around, and there's a ton of mufflers, and he should have known about it in the first place, and therefore you didn't know about it. You're lost.
Well, he doesn't have to make a public announcement. Doesn't have to.
They made the public announcement. You should be aware of it. Object.
Who made the public announcement?
The people who are going to be ultimately squatting in the house. And he said ultimately that because they made it think you should be aware of it, and therefore.
No, that's true, but it doesn't have to be
Therefore, if the guy says.
It doesn't have to be a formal announcement. It doesn't have to be a formal announcement. As long as I'm living in the house normally. I don't have to make an announcement.
But the case we had that time.
Did we?
I struggled with it.
So I made an announcement? I didn't remember an announcement.
I said to him, what happened to the guy? I don't care what type of announcement you're making in the thing as well. This is my house. I live here.
Okay.
You want to make a lot of noise in a lot of places. I don't care.
Right.
This is my place. And you said, no. He has enough rights to be aware of what's going on in the marketplace. So by the same token, you should say this guy here should also be aware of what's going on. If he's too busy, I don't care.
No, but the difference is that we expect a person to hear. But Rova says that you can have a person who is very busy and he's only in town for limited periods of time, and it's a reasonable position to say that he doesn't hear. So I'm not.
It's about being a time.
Yeah, because he's not there the whole time. That's the point. Okay, now the next piece, you've got to stay with it. You've got a bit more complicated this case. Someone said to someone else, my boy is Bahai Ara. What are you doing in this land? So it all starts off the same case, all case studies, right? Omalei said to him, they're real cases, that's what it seems. Omalei said to him, I bought it from so-and-so, Dezov Nominoch. Who bought it from you? Sorry, yeah, bottom of Lamadomadanov, yeah, right, yeah. Okay. I bought it from so-and-so, who bought it from you. The Bach skips out the words to Omali, who said to me. So it's just, I bought it from so-and-so, who bought it from you. Now this is a bit of a problem. You understand, right? What? It's a bit of a dodgy claim, this, right? I've been there for 3 years. And he said, what are you doing in my land? Well, I bought it from this guy, and he bought it from you. So it's a bit murky now. Well, you weakened your position somewhat, haven't you? Is it?
Because what you're now doing is you're basically taking away the Morakamar's position.
What do you mean? He disputes it. He says, don't know what you're talking about.
Sold it.
He says, don't know what you're talking about.
What the Matzik is doing is saying that you are not the Morakam. As far as I'm aware, you are not the Morakam.
No, he's agreeing that you are. That's the problem here. This is where you've got to be very careful of what his words. Look what he said. Yeah, but he's not saying, but he's saying, but what has he said? Look, okay, one second. What has he hasn't said? He hasn't said. There are other cases like that. There are other cases like that where a person says, I don't know who you are. I bought it from someone else. He doesn't say that. He says, I bought it from Ruvain, who bought it from you. So he's agreeing he's the owner.
Saying he was the original.
Well, all right. So you're agreeing that I'm the original owner, right? You're agreeing I'm the original owner. So now you've got to prove I'm no longer the original owner. How are you going to do that? Chazak alone doesn't work. Chazak has to be with a good taina, good claim. You've got to have a solid basis for your chazaka. You can't just say chazaka. Squatter's rights is not just living in the land for 3 years. What we said the whole way through. You need chazaka im taina with a claim. What does a claim mean? Claim doesn't mean I landed from Mars and I found this piece of land first. Claim means a reasonable story. But why? That's not a reasonable story. We'll see. Omale said to him, I'd love commodus. Yeah. Omale said to him, I'd love commodus. Do you not agree to ha'ara didi? You agree that this land was mine, is mine, right? That's what you agree. Because you said he bought it from you, right? You did not buy it from me. So there are a few things he says, there are a few facts here that are clear. Number one, I owned the land. You agree that I owned the land. Number two, you're also admitting that you didn't buy it from me. Zil, love bal dvarim dediyat. This would get lost. That's basically what love bal dvarim dediyat means. Love bal dvarim dediyat basically means I have nothing to do with you. You are completely, you have removed yourself from my frame of reference. A bal dvarim is if we're having a machlokus, right? So there's a tayan and a nitzan. I'm claiming one thing and you claim another thing, and we can claim and counterclaim. We come to Basin, right? Let's fight out in Basin. Here, he's saying, I don't need to go to Basin because you have nothing to do with me. You are irrelevant to me because you're admitting that I own the land and you're admitting that you didn't buy it from me. Okay? So you've introduced a third party. I don't even know who that third party is. I don't care who he is. He can come along with a claim if he thinks he owns it, but it's nothing to do with you. I'm simplifying a lot. There's a long Rashbam here which we have to go through, right? But basically that's it in a nutshell. And Rava says, Omar Rava dina ka'omale. That is, he's saying an argument which stands up in a court of law, right? Dina ka'omale, and the law is with him, and that means it goes back to the original owner. Okay.
Isn't it just a simple case of the person that a lawsuit is basically saying, you have a grievance. Your grievance is not with me. Your grievance is with third party. You're right. You can tell me. I'm not denying that you originally owned that land.
Right.
But I'm telling you, you're coming to me. You're coming to the wrong person here. Just because I happen to be here, but I'm here because I bought it from somebody else, right? Your grievance is not with me. Your grievance is with the person that you sold it to, who's then gone. And
What
sold
grievance?
He's saying I haven't sold for that.
Yeah, he disputes. He says you're lying. He says it's my land.
Sorry, mate, you've been scammed.
Yeah. He says I own the land and you admit I own the land. I own the land and you admit I own the land. The fact that you've got some funny story about someone buying it from me is not relevant to me. That doesn't give you ownership of the land. Now, you can slightly modify your claim, which would give you put you in a much stronger position. And we'll see in the Rashbam, right? There are certain things you could do to make your claim a lot stronger if it was true. But he hasn't done that here. That's important. To understand the Rashbam, we have to see another Gemora briefly in Mem Aleph Amud Beis. Okay, so I want to show you that Gemora first. The Rashbam takes us through a whole thing here, and we just need to see another story to understand it. It's halfway through Mem Aleph Amud Beis. Okay. It's where it says Ahu Gavra. It's about, nearly halfway through Mem Aleph Amud Beis. All right. Ahu Gavra, there was a certain person, the Dorba Kashta Elisa Arba Shoni. He lived in Kashta is the name of a place, and Elisa is an attic. So he lived in this place, in an attic in this place, Arba Shoni, for 4 years. That's a good start. Also, Mari de Besa, the owner of the house, came along, Ashkeche, and he found him. Omani said to him, my boy is Bahai Besa. What are you doing in my house? Right. What are you doing in my house? Omani said to him, Mipalnio Zavinta, the Zavno Minoch. I bought it from so-and-so, who bought it from you. Now, so far, that's basically the same as our case, right? This is very important. That's basically the same as our case so far, right? Now, if you look at the Rashbam, before we see the response, the Rashbam says, it's about halfway through the narrow lines. The Zovna Minoch, b'chazoka, shahisi sover, the Zovna Minoch, l'kachtia mimen. With the assumption that I thought he bought it from you, on that basis I bought it from him. So in other words, I don't have any proof. He didn't show me any documentation. Doesn't he didn't come along and say, here's my shtar that I bought it. I was acting honestly in good faith that this guy purchased it from you a couple of years ago, whatever, and now he's selling it on to me, right? Now, look at the response. I came in front of Rabbi Chia. Omalei said to him, if you have Edim, the Darbo Ihu, the Zovantomine, that the person you bought it from lived in it, Va'afilu chad yoma, even one day, you've got Edim that he lived there for one day, okay? I am going to give it to you. I'll give it to you, and I'll give the land to you. V'lo, and if not, lo not. So, very little, tiny thing can make all the difference. Right? Look at the Rashbam. Afilu chad yoma, kedei la'ames devorecha. In order to strengthen your words, v'oik mo biyodcha, and then I will put it in your hands. I will give it to you. In other words, this is Rabbi Chia acting as the Dayan. Since because you've got a chazaka, you've had 3 years. And then you will no longer need to bring edim. You don't need to bring any witnesses that this person you bought it from the original owners. Why not? It seems like an astonishing thing. Why does it help to say you've got edus that the guy lived there for one day? And the answer is a very important principle. Because we want to help out someone who's inherited property and someone who's bought property. A person who comes because of an inheritance claim or a purchase claim, he doesn't need a proper claim. He just needs a proof that the person who sold it to him has been in it for one day. So this Rashbam is very, very important because it comes in line with what we saw in the Ketzos. Do you remember that we saw the Ketzos at the beginning when we tried to understand what the basis of Chazaka is? And fundamentally, the Ketzos says it's a takonas chachomim, because if we don't step in to help people who buy land, you will never be secure in your land. You understand? Because you're not going to keep your documents forever, and someone's going to come along and they're going to say it was mine, right? And maybe it was originally his, and that's how etc. This is in that same or similar sort of category. It's not exactly the same, but it's in a similar category, right? Because the argument is that once you become a lokeach, a buyer, Beis Din will step in and help your case. There's another Ketzos HaChoshen on this Rashbam, and let me read you what he says, very brief. He brings the case, and he brings the Ma'arit, who says, the reason is, what's this idea of one day? The guy lived in it for one day, and you'll see why we really need this to understand our case, because our case is going to be the reverse case where we don't have the one day, okay? Mishum deloi choshev lokeach, you're not called a buyer, Elohim kein mevarer, unless you can, it's clear, that the person who sold it to you lived in it for one day. Because if you haven't had that one day proof, there's an edim that he's lived there for one day. Lav lokeach, he's not a buyer. V'lo yoda shum taina liton, right? V'lo yoda shum taina liton tola atzma ba'achirim, right? He doesn't know any claim to make a claim, right? And effectively, he's just depending himself on other people. It's a chazaka, therefore, which has no claim. He says that's what the Rashbam says. And then you won't need to bring edim that you bought it from him, right? Because we then say and we will then step in to help out buyers. Yeah. Do you understand? Do you understand the logic here? It's based. Go on.
I think you can't complete yourself by parting with money. You've got to do something that an actual acquisition.
No,
One day to do that.
Well, no. One second. You can complete a sale just by parting with money if we knew that had happened.
Yeah.
That's another option.
I thought you've got to have some sort of sheaf.
No. If you know, the perfectly legitimate way to buy karka is with money. So yeah. So if we knew that you had bought it, if we had evidence that you had bought it or he had bought it from the original owner, then all bets are off. Then it's a totally different. We don't have any of that. Oh, so how does this work? What's the lomdus? What does it mean? So I've got edim that you lived in it for one day, and at the same day you're still relying on my word. He lived there for one day, but maybe everyone's lying. Maybe he's lying. The answer is that once you are a lokeach, once you are defined as a buyer, Beis Din will help you. How will Beis Din help you? And that's because of the rule of turn, which you find in a number of places. Turn in a lokeach. We create a claim, we create a story to benefit a lokeach. What story do we create here? The story we create is, you've been in it for 3 years, which is chazaka. You make a claim that you bought it from so-and-so, who bought it from the other guy, right? Without proof that you're a lokeach, you're a buyer, we don't step in and help you. You're stuck. We'll see that in our case now. But once you become a buyer, because the other guy, you prove that the other guy lived in it for a day, so clearly you did buy it from him because he definitely owned it. You with me? Yeah, that's enough. That makes you into a lokeach, and then we'll step in and help you.
This principle of helping the buyer.
Yeah.
Because we also had the case a few weeks ago again.
Definitely limited.
Where they were in the same house together, and
yeah, of course.
Being on the,
yeah, 100%. And we have to establish you got chazaka 100%. Of course, it's limited. It's not a. Yeah, of course not. But it is something which we use to help people who are buyers, right?
Well, once you stop, sorry. Well, how long ago the guy who apparently sold time number 2
Yeah.
was not a tenant? So he was living there. The insurance didn't pay. It was a tenant.
And the answer is that we don't know. We don't know. But once we have clarity that you are a lokeach, in this case of doubt, because ultimately it's a doubt. There's a machlokus here, right? There's an argument going on. There's a turn and a nitzan. The original owner says it's mine. He says it's his. What do we do? We're stuck. The answer is, if we can have a situation and we create and we can prove that you're a buyer, we give you the benefit of the doubt. It's true, we don't know. It could be that the guy in the middle is lying, and it could be you're lying, and it could be the original. It's true. But if you become a lokeach, we shift the benefit of the doubt to you. And the difference with this case is he doesn't have that. He doesn't have that. Well, he only has his words. And his words were, I bought it from someone who bought it from you.
Okay, and
In other words, that's what he told me.
said what?
Same thing. But in addition, he's got Eidus that the original owner lived there for one day.
No, he doesn't.
He does?
Mem Aleph.
Yeah.
They went to Rabbi Chia and he said, if you can bring that.
Yeah, okay, yeah, of course. Yeah. No, of course, 100%. I would.
Really, the cases are identical. The only difference is,
Yeah.
Rockwell just closed it down.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Hold on a second. I will give you some leeway as long as you can bring me some sort of proof, that there is a middleman.
Yeah. You're touching on a really important point. You've actually answered, I think, a question I've got on the Rashbam, Johnny. So well done. No, because the Rashbam is complicated only because the Rashbam sets the scenario up he says that the Gemora doesn't mention here that he's been there for 3 years. There's no chazaka.
Yeah, that seems to be
That's a big problem. It does say chazaka. Yeah, so it was a chazaka. Exactly. It was chazaka, right? Exactly, right? 4 years, even better, right? Well, so this is a very strange. So the Rashbam struggles with this. He doesn't really struggle with it, but you'll see this was a problem he had. Why is it that in this case, there's no chazaka as well? And because of the fact there's no chazaka, the Rashbam is going to end off by saying that because there's no chazaka, even if here he has the Eidus of one day, it's not going to help. So yeah, exactly. So that's right. So this is where the Rashbam is going to exactly. So there are these subtle differences between the cases, but you have to understand Mem Aleph to understand the Rashbam. Okay, so we're going to do the Rashbam now. It's on the top of the Omid, right? I mentioned before the Rashbam is much longer than Rashi. So you've got to hold, as they say in the yeshiva world, you've got to hold cop.
But this business of helping buy.
Yeah.
It's not the be all and end all.
No, but it's an important concept. You have to know how to apply it. And we're going to keep it in our minds because it comes back again and again and again. You'll see. Okay. No, you've got it. It's grey. No, great. It's a concept which you have to know to apply. Once he's a look at, you assist by making a claim. Yeah. Omelay said to me, says the Rashbam, Kloima, top of the Omid, right? It's top of the next one. Kloima means top of the Lamed Omid base. Kloima means to say, Sha'amali, he said to me, B'shas Mechira, this is the claim. He said to me at the time of sale, Shulot Chomimcha, he bought it from you. Umeyachar Shaloi To'an. And since he doesn't claim right? He doesn't say that I ate it, I used 3 years, shnei chazaka, ushtar mechira shaloi, and the shtar is still in his hand. This is a bit of a confusing phrase, this. They changed it to ushtar, and the shtar mechira is still in his hand. In other words, it seems to be saying that it's not me. Yeah, it's not me.
The case in basically there, it's more than just simple chazaka. It's actually got a shtar.
No, but he here. No, you see, it's not. He says. No, he's saying. I think what he's saying is he seems to be saying that there's no. I didn't use it for 3 years, right? I haven't got. I'm not. He's not claiming. He's not claiming shnei chazaka. He's not claiming shnei chazaka, and he also doesn't have a shtar mechira. He's missing both things. And that his shtar mechira is in his hand. In other words, he has nothing. Pardon?
No, when he bought it, the land from the person he bought it from, he had the shtar mechira, he bought it from Morocco.
Who? But that he's not claiming that.
Who's Piotr? What's Piotr? What are you saying in his hand? Are we talking about
in the hands of the.
In the hands of the buyer, the one who's living in it now. He's got no chazaka. He hasn't been there for 3 years. He's not claiming he's been there for 3 years. Yeah, and he's also not claiming that he has a shtar mechira as well. He doesn't have anything. No, well,
Is there a spelling? Is that a typo?
there's a mistake here. The Oizvahada edition adds in the word ushtar mechira shelo dena biyodo and his shtar mechira, but it doesn't have much that helps.
Basically to say, since he doesn't have either the claim that he's still got the.
Yeah,
shtar in his
yeah,
hand,
exactly,
or that
exactly,
he has
exactly.
Hazaka
Yeah,
having
yeah,
lived there
yeah.
For
Yeah.
3+ years,
yeah.
then he doesn't have any, and he doesn't have a. And he doesn't really have a leg to stand.
The truth is that it could be that the shtar mechira shelo dena biyodo means that the person he bought it from doesn't have the shtar mechira as well. The Rashbam at the end seems to imply that.
That feels more logical. But it does say the genuine
Yeah, I think that's positive.
What, as in, no, but how's that positive? What way?
As in this, he did have a stamp.
Who does? He does?
The middle.
middle guy. I think we're talking about the middle guy. In other
Yeah,
words,
we are talking about
he doesn't have the star because the original star
Mm.
that Shimon bought from the Morokama is still in Shimon's hand.
With the person he bought it from.
That's why I don't have it.
I don't think that can be though, because then the whole of the rest of it doesn't make sense. Because no, because I'll tell you why, because this case is based on the fact that there's no external evidence that the middleman ever owned it. And that's what the whole difference is between this and their mother.
but isn't he claiming that at the time when I bought it, the middle guy had a stamp here?
I mean,
I thought that's how I can break the word. So the current guy
Is
who
it
lives
sure?
there,
You
number
see,
3
well, you see, the problem is there's this Mr. Middleman. There's this mystery man in the middle who the Morokama denies the existence of, and the occupant is basically basing his whole claim on.
yes, the middleman. Yeah.
So the middleman, what tells what the Rashbam is trying to say is the middleman had the shtar mechira from you, the Morokama. So that's how I knew that he was a genuine seller, and that established me as the buyer. So otherwise, I've got nothing to hang my hat on that I bought it.
Yeah,
But isn't that what the Rashbam says?
that's the problem.
There is not the existence of a shtar
Where
mechira.
does it say that aim?
Because it said shelo, and that lo is on both lo that he's ta'an v'achalti shni chazaka, ushtar mechira shelo oden biyod. Since he doesn't have either
It's a difficult phrase, this one.
or that there is a shtar mechira that he still has in his hands. It's saying he has neither of those two elements. If he had one of those elements, then he would have something to hang his
Yeah,
hat.
no, but I'm saying
He-
it's still in his hand.
Yeah,
Yes,
but you
but
have
it
to
said
prove
since
the
the
stamp
shelo, he
goes
does not.
together, it's an act.
Look at the shlo. It's not the lamed aleph.
Yeah, it's Lamed Vov.
It's
No,
lamed vav.
It's the word
No,
you
you're talking
made
about the line above. Talking about the line above. He's-
on the second line.
Tell me if
Made
it's
Akha
stamp,
shelo ta'an.
Yeah, he did not make the taina. V'achatir shtei chazaka. And what? And
he didn't have a stamp.
yeah,
Yeah.
that I think that's the only way to understand it.
Basically, he doesn't have anything to hang his hat. He can't say that the middleman, the mystery middleman, or himself doesn't have a sale document, and he doesn't, and he's not claiming that he's been there for 3+ years.
Yeah, but I think the only way. Let's 1 second. The word shaloi. I've got something else here. No, okay, fine. Let's leave it as that for the moment, because I think the only way to understand that line must be that he has neither. He doesn't have a Shnei Chazaka, and also he doesn't have the Shtar Mechira, right? Okay. So the Rashbam says, Umaskono de Milsa, the conclusion is that, as Rava says, you give it back to the person who claims it's his, the original owner. For Hainu time, this is the reason. The Kirvan de Moida de Shalo Hoya Hakaka Mitzchila, since he admits, that means the person responds by admitting that the karka, the land, used to belong to the original owner, because he said, what did he say? I bought it from so-and-so who bought it from you. So he's admitting that the guy was the original, did used to own the land. Therefore, not only in a case where he didn't have a chazaka of 3 years, which the Rashbam is going to say that's our Gemora, right? Where he didn't have 3 years. Even if he had a chazaka for 3 years, nami eino chazaka. It's not a chazaka. Even if you were there for 3 years, and we're going to take it away from him. It's a chazaka without a claim. Shehu eino yodea. Okay, so the Rashbam is now going on a bit of a tangent because he's saying, I'm telling you, our Gemara is where there's no 3 years. He's going to come back to that later. But he says, even if there was 3 years, it wouldn't help. You know why? Because the chazaka sheina motaina. Shehu enu yodea. He doesn't know whether it belonged to the person who sold it to him or not. He has no idea whether it belonged to him, the middleman. That word shaloi is the next word, shel moicha. It's like him recognizing a field which doesn't belong to the seller. It's like recognizing the field is not owned by the seller. Because what has he said? All he said is, I bought it from so-and-so, who bought it from you? Or who told me he bought it from you? So you're basically admitting that you've got no idea that this middleman ever owned it. And therefore, you've got to return it to the person who claims it's his. Interestingly, you can claim his money back from the person you sold it to. The guy who sold you dodgy merchandise, you can get your money back, right? As we paskin in Shnai Moichsen in of Metzia. And even though there's no edim for the ma'arer, do you not agree to me? Etc. So he's slipped in a few things here. There's no edus that the ma'arer used to own the land. He doesn't need that because he's got something better than edus, or just as good as edus, which is that both parties agree that I used to own it. I say I own it, and you agree I own it. This is how you can mess yourself up if you say the wrong thing in Beis Din. Because you've admitted it. You admit it yourself, it's like 100 edim, right? So everyone agrees he used to own the land. Okay? Now, it's interesting that the person, as we said, is not going to be out of pocket because he can go back to the seller, the middleman, and say, you sold me dodgy stuff. Huh?
Got no time.
If there was a seller, yeah, we're assuming there was a seller. You know, he gave money to someone.
He's got no time. He's got no stock, and he's got no chazaka.
That will can fight that. They can fight that in base. There's a separate claim. No. You're right. The guy could say, the guy could deny it or whatever. Either way, he can definitely take him to Beis Din, and he can say, I paid good money for this land, and this land, it wasn't ever really yours. Okay. V'loyam rinon. And we don't say, says the Rashbam, we don't say the following migoy. Since I could have said, I bought it from you, he could have said, I bought it from you, and I consumed 3 years chazaka. Therefore, because he could have said that, when he also says, when he says, I bought it from so-and-so, who bought it from you, he should also be believed. So Rashbam has a bit of a question now. He says, why isn't there a decent migoy? Migoy is always a way. Yeah, we see this throughout this parak. It gives you a claim of ownership, right? Yeah, the famous migoys. There are lots of migoys in this parak, right? Migoy is an argument, is a claim. What is a migoy? What is the migoy here? The migoy is, I could have said something better. I could have said, I bought it from you, and I was in it for 3 years, and it would have been mine. Chazaka sheisha matayna. So therefore, I should also be believed when I say I bought it from so-and-so who bought it from you. Why is that not a good migoy? I could have said something better. So believe me when I say a dodgy thing. The answer is, because he has no idea if the middleman actually did buy it from the seller. And therefore, it's not reasonable to say a migoy. Believe me when I say this, because I could have said that. I can't believe you when you say this because you've got no idea that it's true. You've got no idea the guy bought it from the original owner. Since therefore he admits, right, to the person who's making a claim that it used to belong to him, the shelo ha'asah, we say that the admission of the Baal Din is like 100 edim. The gam moidu she'eno yodea imlocha mochra lo min abaylim imlav, and he also admits that he doesn't know if the seller bought it from the owner or not. He has no idea whether he did or not. The hollow time the zovna minoch kamoi didi. He doesn't say he bought it from you in front of me. He's got no idea whether the middleman bought it or not. He hasn't got a clue. Okay, he's got no idea. The gam ein lo edim shehechek lo hamocha yom echad. That's why I needed to show you Mem Aleph. And he also doesn't have edim that the other guy was machzik, lived in it for one day. The seller, the middleman, hilkoch hifsid. Therefore, he loses out. Now, the Rashbam in a minute is now going to give us the flip side, how you can win. But let's be really clear why you lose. Okay? The Rashbam tells us like this. This guy didn't actually even have 3 years chazakah. But even if he did, he would still lose. Because he doesn't have a taina. What's a taina? A claim is a claim of ownership, right? But your claim of ownership is by definition undermined by the very words that you've said. You want to put a claim, your pitch of ownership is, I bought it from so-and-so who bought it from you. But by saying that, you have proven that I'm the owner, and you have no evidence whatsoever that this other guy bought it. Okay, do you understand? Because he didn't buy it in front of you. You've no evidence that he ever actually owned it. You with me? Yeah. So therefore, your claim is destroyed. Is like it's got like a self-explosive an IED. IED. What's it called? An IED is something else. An improvised explosive device. Yeah. An IED. You understand? It's blown up. Do you understand why his claim is blown up by itself? What is his claim? His claim is, I bought it from this guy. I bought it from you. He just said that I own it. So unless you can prove that the middleman had it, you're stuck. You're ruined.
Why can't you argue it's a bit like a Pesha hit it?
Pesha also Pesha hit it. Why?
Because if you,
That's
if
a migo,
number
really.
one, if number one is claiming, thanks for proving that I used to own it.
Right.
So the same mouth that said that I used to own it, it's also saying that the middle guy also used to own it, and I bought it from the middle guy. So therefore, I've kind of created that circle.
You have, but there is no proof. You have got nothing to back you up that the other guy ever owned it.
Okay, but Rashbam is also saying that it's like me also testifying with the 1,000 ADM that Mr. Number One.
Yeah,
did own it.
that's clear.
So, but then why?
Because that's who Dorsbal did. I'm admitting that you used to own it. Now, the second step you want us to believe is that he owned it and then someone else owned it. But why should we believe that someone else owned it? What proof do you have that someone else owned it?
Same. That's what I'm saying. So
Why?
I'm saying that you owned it and that he owned it. So if you don't believe me with him,
That's something else. Is that you're saying you can't believe him, by half measure.
Yeah.
Why not?
Then
Why?
I'm assuming the Mara come and needs to come with something else.
But Pesha also, I don't think applies here.
Is it like the meta kind of thing?
Yeah, you're not saying Pesha also. You want to say,
You're going to believe me that he wrote the Mr. Number
how can he be half believed? How can he be half believed? Because we're basically believing him when he says that this person used to own it, but we are disbelieving him when he interprets that, whatever, explains it, that yes, you used to own it, but then someone else owned it, right?
No, because the other guy's saying I owned it.
Yeah, it's against you.
everybody agrees that I own it.
So I'm kind of, it's 2 against 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What you've said now has based on have to take the case, like any case, and whittle it down to certainties. Let's try and establish the certainties. What certainties do we have here?
I owned it.
Yeah. We have one certainty that everyone agrees on, which is that you own the land. What happened subsequently? I don't know. Who knows? I mean, you're saying he told you he bought it. What? So what? Doesn't mean anything. You've got to prove it. You've got to prove it. And the miga also doesn't work because he has no idea whether this guy bought it. He can't say, believe me when I say this guy bought it. You've got no idea whether you bought it. You've got no idea what happens. There's no evidence. There's no shtar. There's nothing. Right? Now, Hilkoch Hifsid. Avol, how will you get it? If he did have a chazaka for 3 years, so let's say he has a chazaka for 3 years, that's not our case, because he doesn't, but let's say he did, and he claims, I bought it from so-and-so, who bought it from you in front of me. I know 100% that he bought it from you, because I was there. Then he will be believed. Then he's believed because he's got a good migo now. Because he could say, I bought it from you directly, and I was in had a chazaka of 3 years. You got to think about this very carefully. There's a difference. Migo is a very good claim if it makes sense, if it stacks up. So this changes everything. If I say that that I bought it from so and so, who told me he bought it from you, therefore believe me when I say that, because I might say, I could say I bought it directly from you. We turn around to you and say, but you've got no idea whether he bought it or not, because you are admitting that you didn't see the sale. You're just saying, this is what he told me. This is the spiel he told me. I don't care what he told you. It's irrelevant. It doesn't give you a believability. But if you say, I bought it from so-and-so, who bought it from you, and I was there, I was present, that means that I could just as easily have said, I bought it directly from you. Why'd you bring in the middleman? And therefore, that's a migo, and that will work as a decent claim together with chazak. You have to have chazak. Inami, another alternative you could do to win, is if yesh like edim shehechazik ba'amocha yom echad, the case we saw in Yom Aleph. If you've been there for 3 years, and you've got edim that the moicha lived in it, had a chazaka for 1 day, that's also enough because of the principle of turning the lokeach. Once you're a proven buyer, we step in and support you. The hochi amrinon lekamon bepirkin, and this is what we say later on. Gabi Yehuda b'kashto b'nisa arba shnin, someone who lived in the attic for 4 years. The hocha b'Yehuda. So full stop. Okay, you with me? You with me? What you understand the structure of this Rosh Hashanah? Rosh Hashanah said. Firstly, he set out why it is that here in this case, whether you've had chazaka or not had chazaka, in fact, this case is no chazaka, there's no 3 years. But even if it was, you wouldn't win because your taina is garnished, it's relevant, it's no good, it's taina. Then he says, I'll set you up a case where you would win with chazaka if you have 3 years chazaka and you have a decent taina. And I'll give you 2 possibilities of a good claim with 3 years chazaka. Number 1 is a decent migo. He bought it from you in front of me. I was there. That's a decent migo because I could just say I bought it myself, and that works with 3 years chazaka. Or even if you don't have a well formulated and well oiled claim, but you put yourself in a position that proves you're a buyer because you've got edus that the seller, the middleman, was definitely there for at least 1 year. Then we'll do the claim for you. What? 1 day. So 1 day, sorry. Then turn in the lokeach. You don't have a claim. You don't have any claim. All you've got is edus that you've been there for 1 day, but that's enough for us. That is enough for Beis Din to swing the pendulum in favor of the seller, of the buyer. Do you understand, right? Because we want to help the buyer. 1 second, one of the buyer. Okay, so that was stage 2 of the Rosh Hashanah. Stage 3 of this Rosh Hashanah is coming now. In this case, even if he comes with edim that the seller has been there for 1 day, but he doesn't know whether he bought it from the original owner or not. All he has is this 1 day edus of someone living there for 1 day, the guy who sold it to you. Doesn't help at all. Because you haven't got a chazaka of 3 years. And also the first one doesn't have a shtar that he bought it from the original owner. Pardon? It could be a tenant, it could be anything, we don't know, right? It doesn't have any shtar mechira. So you can't use the principle here, says the Rashbam, of turning l'lokeach. Turning l'lokeach means based on will step in and help a buyer. But they will only do that in a scenario where you've got chazaka, you've got a chazaka, right? Or you don't, and also, in other words, there are 2 ways. 1 second, there are 2 things you can have, right? You could either have a chazaka of 3 years, or the person who sold it to you could still have a shtar. If the person who sold it to you still has a shtar, we would also do turn in l'lokeach. That's the implication. Do you understand? Turn in l'lokeach means based on want to help buyers, right? But based on will say to you, my hands are tied. We can't help you here. Do you know why? Because you're not a lokeach, you're not a buyer. You don't have 3 years chazaka, so therefore you're not classified in that sense as a buyer, right? And you also are not a lokeach because the guy who you bought it from can't prove, right, that we have no proof that he ever bought it from the first person. We have nothing. We have nothing to stand on, right? And therefore, that is why it doesn't work here. It doesn't work here. And that is why the scenario here is such that because there's no shnei chazaka, and this, by the way, Johnny, this is what I meant to you before. You helped me answer a question here, because why does the Rashbam say that this whole scenario is where there's no chazaka, shnei chazaka? If it's true that this case works, even if he has shnei chazaka, the whole first part of the Rashbam, he was setting out that even if you have chazaka, it doesn't work. Why? Because you don't have a taina. Your taina is, I bought it from someone who told me he bought it from you. That's not a taina. So you're going to lose it anyway. So why not set the Gemora up in such a way that it's talking about where he had chazaka as well? What's the answer? Because Johnny's problem. Yeah. Why doesn't the Reb Chia here or someone step in and say, oh, 1 day. As long as you've been there for 1 day, you've got evidence that the guy's been there for 1 day, that's enough. So the Rashbam saw that and said, must be that this is a scenario where that's not going to help. The 1 day evidence that the seller, the middleman, has been there for is not going to help. Why not? Because I don't have chazaka.
And the question is, why is this story even here?
Why is it here?
We're dealing with.
Oh, why isn't it? There's no chazaka. Yeah. There's no chazaka at all. There's no chazaka. Okay, that's not so strange.
The situation where
It's not so strange. It's not so strange, I think. 1 second, I'm going to take some questions in. There's a few short Rashbams to finish. Do you not admit to me that it was mine, as I've explained, says the Rashbam? And you didn't buy it from me. Even if you would claim that you bought it from me, this is very important. Even if you would claim you bought it from me, says the owner, you have nothing. You don't have a shtar that it was bought from me, and you don't have chazaka. So it's not going to help you coming along just with a taina. If I turn up 1 day and I knock on your door, Jeremy, and I say, you know that house you're living in, it's mine, right? That's effectively what he's doing. You're coming with no chazaka, and you're basically you've just got a taina. That's no good. That doesn't work. Zil, he says, go away, mikarka shali, from my land. Lav bal dvarim didiyat. You are nothing to do with me. Vani muchzak ba yosem imcha. I am more muchzak than you. You haven't been there for 3 years. You see the whole thing. He bases the whole story on the fact that you don't have 3 years. You haven't got a chazaka. That's why you're not Baal Devarim. Omar Rava, Dino ka Amalei. Rava said to him, he's saying the law, it's correct. Hama'ara, the halach is with the Ma'ara. Filu im hechzik bo shalosh shanim. And even if he does have 3 years, Kemoshe Parashti, as I've explained, v'chein halacha, this is the halacha. Rashbam slips that in there to remind us. Maybe this is answering Martin's question. You're going to ask me, so what is this doing? Cheskes Apatim? There's no chazaka. So Rashbam says, this case works even if he was there for 3 years. You understand? Basically, because he wasn't there for 3 years, there's like another additional layer of what is not going to work, and that is the Mem Aleph claim. The 1 day is not going to work because there's no chazak, right? You don't have a starting block upon which to base that, right? But here, even if you were there for 3 years, just saying I bought it from so and so, bought it from you, is not going to give it to you because that's not a taina. That's not a valid. That's not a strong enough taina. That's not a strong enough claim. And if you don't get it, you don't own it.
So my question to you about.
Do you understand? 1 second before you come to your question, Jeremy. Do you understand the case? Yeah, it's a very important. It's a bit involved. But the principles should be clear in the sense that we have a case here, which the way the Rashbam learns, there happens to be no 3 years chazaka. There's no 3 years chazaka, and therefore, even if you had 1 day, the guy had been there, you could prove the guy had been there for 1 day, it wouldn't help you. But even if there was 3 years chazaka, fundamentally, what you say is not going to help you. By saying I bought it from someone who says he bought it from you is not going to help. You've been moided that I own it, it's mine. What was it? Well, Jeremy had a question first. I'll come back to him. What was Jeremy? What's your point?
Legal question that you could have said that I bought it because I was there with you.
Yes.
How does that stand up if there weren't witnesses to prove that he was with you about that? The Migo is
No, because Migo has its own logic. Migo is a svara.
set process.
Yeah. Migo has its own svara. Migo is a svara. That if I could have said something better, and I said something which was a bit of a more convoluted claim, which is, if you like, less logical, or there's more reason to put holes in it or whatever, right? Then it's logical to say I'm telling the truth. Okay, that's what it is. You don't have witnesses, but you've got chazaka. You've got 3 years chazaka.
So you're saying the fact that he says that I could have said that I bought it from you because I was there when you sold it.
Yeah.
He can't prove with witnesses because it's chazaka.
Yeah, it's accompanied by chazaka, right? Accompanied by chazaka. It wouldn't work, but it might work if you have, yes, that's right.
But if you had Aiden,
No, Aiden that he's been there 1 day is not enough without chazaka.
if you had Aiden said that he was with a guy when he said that I bought it from you.
Aiden says,
What he's saying is that there are 3 things.
Yeah.
Number 1 is the chazaka.
yeah,
Number 2 is the 1 day.
yes,
And
1
number
day.
3 is that you sold it to this guy in front of
me.
Yeah, but they operate independently.
Yeah, so if you've got
They don't work together.
2 without the chazaka, what Jeremy's asking is, would that be enough? And I don't think that's
Based on the fact that-
No, it's not. It's not. The only way you can get it without chazaka is that very last line in the Rashbam. If the middleman has a shtar mechira, that he bought it. If the middleman has a shtar mechira, yeah, then all bets are off, because then the original guy's out of the picture. If the middleman has a shtar mechira, right, then obviously I can come along just with a time. I don't need chazaka.
He has 2 witnesses, 2 Aiden who says that I was there when you sold it, and therefore I don't have chazaka, but I have 2 Aiden that were there.
You don't have to Aiden. That was never in the question.
No, I know.
If you did have to Aiden, that would be different. Yeah, that would be different. But now you understand the top line. I mean, that complicated on Rashbam. Since the case is, says the Rashbam, because he hasn't tied or shtar mechira shlo, then it'll be yoda, right? And that the shtar mechira still is it doesn't have either. It doesn't have either. John, you had a question?
I think fundamentally, I'm just still trying to understand what the chiluk is between the case in Mem Aleph and the case here, because when the Rashbam,
Yeah.
and because here, what the Rashbam is saying is, even if
Yes, chazaka. Oh, yes.
had
Yes, it wouldn't work. Why not?
because he didn't say it.
No, but yeah, because he doesn't have Eidus Yom Echad. Your problem wasn't that.
No.
Yeah, Eidus Yom Echad would be good, but he doesn't have Eidus Yom Echad. But your question was, why didn't someone do what Rabbi Chia did in Mem Aleph? And the answer to that is because he didn't have chazaka.
Yeah, but the point is, the Rashbam says, even if...
Yeah, that's true. The Rashbam tells us that. But you can't ask the question on the Maisa anymore. On the story.
The Rashbam.
Yeah, yeah.
From the Rashbam's perspective, what's the difference?
No, you can't. I know what we're trying to do, but I think it's a bit of an illegal move, with respect, in chess, because basically you can't ask a question on a Maisa. Fragnish and Kashazuf and a Maisa. You can't ask a question on a story. The story doesn't involve chazaka. Therefore, it's no question.
I'm asking, is it the fact that when the person was asked, he never volunteered that he had chazaka?
Yeah.
Even if he had chazaka, the fact that he didn't mention
he didn't mention
that counts against
it. Maybe we just assume he didn't have it. I mean, the truth is, this is no. I didn't mean, no, I meant only an illegal move because if the story is set up in a certain way, then you've got to operate within that story. The question, look, at the end of the day, there's a massive Tosfos on Lamed Amud Aleph, the homework for next week, right? Tosfos has big problems with the Rashbam, very big problems with the Rashbam about this. He's talking about Migdal and Mafrei, all sorts of things. We don't have time. Don't have time now. But anyway, so that's there's a lot more. There's a huge amount in this, but hopefully it's clear in that way at least. All right. See you next time.